The Fasting Mimicking Diet by Valter Longo. Hello, and happy Lunar New Year. Today, in this live stream, we're going to talk about the Fasting Mimicking Diet. We're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of fasting, specifically when it comes to the FMD by Valter Longo. We are going to talk about who can fast, who should fast, who shouldn't fast, who shouldn't do a DIY FMD in particular, and who can benefit from fasting. I'll just tell you the answer to that right now. It's everybody, apparently, according to the fasting experts. And then lastly, we'll talk about how to do a DIY. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. First, I should say a disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. This is not medical advice. I'm not a medical person. I'm not a fasting expert. I'm just a novice in fasting who's just happened to do the FMD now 12 times over the span of 2 years, 3 years, almost 3 years. 2.5 years. I love the FMD. I've never done a water only fast. One day I will work up to it, but I'm just not there yet. And this is probably going to be a 3-parter. And there's just so much to cover, but let's focus on those 3 things in this live stream today. All right, so I have a few very popular videos, popular for me because this is a tiny channel right now, but I have very popular videos about the FMD DIY style. And what I'm going to cover today is what I have not covered in those videos, okay? So we're gonna refer to the Longevity Diet by Valter Longo, and this also has like nothing to do with ProLon. It has nothing to do with the official fasting mimicking diet. I am just a little bit obsessed with the FMD because of my own personal experiences with it, because of what I've seen from others, because of the comments that I've received from people who have done a DIY as well as the official ProLon. There are just so many benefits, and really this channel exists because I just want to encourage you to eat more plants and just focus on our health. And so we have that in common because we want to be healthy. We want to maintain our health, or we want to get healthy. So am I qualified? You could say so. This is my personal channel, and these are my personal experiences. And I've read quite a bit about this topic, and I want to summarize all of the coolest things that I've learned about it, okay? So when it comes to fasting, there's a lot of different types of fasting. Now, Valter Longo is almost always referring to real fasting. So he is a total supporter of intermittent fasting every single day. He thinks everybody should fast 12 to 13 hours a day. If you have signed up for ProLon's email campaigns like I have, recently, this past week, they sent out an email for a 1-day fast claiming that their founder, Valter Longo, is a proponent for 15 to 16-hour fasts. I personally have heard him in videos say that all the fasting research shows negative outcomes when we fast in that fasting window. But then there are other experts in the health and nutrition and wellness field, and they also are proponents of a longer fasting window, like 15, 16 hours. Joel Fuhrman, the Mastering Diabetes guys, just to name a couple. So I don't know, but today we're going to focus on Valter Longo, okay? And this is his definition of fasting. To get into a true fasting state, he says that it takes at least a day or 2 days, so 24 to 48 hours. All right, so on page 101, if we consider fasting as the period necessary to switch from a primarily sugar-burning mode, or glucose, to a fat-burning mode, or ketone bodies, then only periods of abstention from food lasting 2 or 3 days or more can be considered fasting. So he's very clear in stating that we're not getting into a true fasting state if we're just fasting overnight, right? So 12 hours, 16 hours, whatever it is, that's not a true fasting state. But again, he is a proponent of intermittent fasting every day, not during the FMD, but around the FMD. Okay. So cool things about the FMD is that it's really safe. So sometimes fasting sounds really intimidating and scary because we want to eat and quench our hunger. But there are so many benefits to fasting, right? And just hitting pause on these things. And we'll get into how cool some of that stuff is. But if you are considering fasting or doing the FMD and you're really intimidated by it, which is what I have heard really often in the last year from complete strangers, these beautiful strangers online, they tell me that I make it seem approachable. It's totally approachable. Okay. I don't like being hungry. I get hangry. It's really uncomfortable. And I just did it to support my husband who wanted to try it out. And fast forward, here I am 12 rounds later. All right. So try it. Try it. There's nothing wrong with just trying. Okay. But what I love about the FMD is that it is a very safe version of fasting, and we're getting into a true fasting state. I love the fasting state. I believe it is how we get closer to our natural state. I believe that we are oftentimes bogged down by just so much stuff. There's just so much weight on us all the time, right? Like we're just constantly feeding the face. We are eating way more calories. I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, of course, but many of us eat way more calories than we need. Some people call that calorie poisoning. You know, no matter what food group or food tribe you belong to, whether it be like keto or carnivore or plant-based or vegan, many of us are just eating too many calories, and that can get us into some trouble. So what I like about this is that we get to eat some calories and still get into the fasting state. So he is comparing water-only fasting on page 102 to his FMD. So by contrast with the water-only fasting, the 5-day FMD was developed with the following goals. I love these goals. Number 1, to provide sufficient calories to be safe outside of a clinic. Safe outside of a clinic. This is really key because not all of us want to go to a fasting clinic. We just want to do this at home. Number 2, to provide a variety of components that most people can enjoy. Real food, right? Number 3, to be 100% plant-based. This is absolutely critical, as described in the longevity diet in chapter 4. Which basically is eat a whole bunch of plants, eat a variety. He believes in eating fish once a week. He believes in eating lots of olive oil. That's not a whole plant food, of course, it's processed, but you do you. And then lastly, number 4, to be equally effective as fasting, if not more so, especially when it comes to gut health. That we're going to get into next week. The FMD, as demonstrated in our animal studies, treats aging and promotes healthy longevity using the following processes: switching all cells to a protected anti-aging mode and promoting autophagy. Apparently, our bodies are always going through autophagy, which is like cellular recycling, or our cells kind of eating damaged parts of themselves. But maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But in a fasting state, that's really kicked up a notch. Or if that's not true, that we're not undergoing autophagy on a regular basis, then during fasting, we are undergoing autophagy. So our bodies are eating away at damaged parts of themselves. This is great because damaged cells, mutated cells, can turn into cancerous cells, and that's just what nobody wants. So if we are self-cleaning, beautiful. Self-eating of parts of the cell and replacing damaged cell components with newly generated functional ones. Killing damaged cells in many organs and systems and replacing them with newly regenerated cells from activated stem cells. Stem cells we'll dig into a little more next week, which is like so juicy. And then shifting the body into an abdominal/visceral fat burning mode, which continues after returning to a normal diet. Yes, the fat burning continues after we start eating again or refeeding, probably due to epigenetic changes, which are modifications of the DNA and proteins that bind DNA. Okay, so then on page 103, there's all kinds of things, for weight loss, for muscle mass, meaning that we maintain our muscle mass. So we are burning fat for energy during the fast, during the 5 days. That fat burning continues once we are on day 6, day 7, we're refeeding, we're eating again, we're living our lives normally again, but we maintain our muscle mass. Very cool. Glucose, your glucose levels, it helps with blood pressure, it helps with your cholesterol, It helps with our triglycerides. The list goes on and on and on and on. Okay, so he has a TEDx talk. You can look at that. It's very interesting. It's a preventative kind of fast. Preventative meaning preventing chronic diseases. That's the game I'm here to play. And then on page 108, he says the major advantage of the FMD approach compared with drug interventions and stem cell-based therapies, because those are options too, is that it awakens a highly coordinated response that is already built into the body. It is already built into the body. This is a natural system that is awakened when we are in a fasting state, but that has fallen dormant because of our steady and constant consumption of food, right? Eating too many calories, constantly eating, never feeling hangry. There's food everywhere. At present, FMD represents perhaps the safest and most potent way to reverse many age and diet-related problems by fixing or replacing and thereby rejuvenating cells, systems, and organs in a natural way. This is what I love. I love going the natural way. He calls it a self-healing program on page 109. I'm all about the drugs too. I'm all about the pharmaceuticals when we need them and modern medicine. I love modern medicine, but if we can have access to something natural with insanely good benefits, then why not, right? Okay, so this was published in 2018. So as of 2018, at least 10,000 patients have undergone the ProLon FMD therapy, and there have been no reports of major side effects. I mean, he goes on to say he's actually really surprised. He was in a fasting summit recently, and he said he's actually really surprised that they have not seen major side effects, because that's what you expect when you run scientific experiments, right? There's always negatives. So there are so many benefits to this. My personal benefits, okay, well, I definitely burned visceral fat. Visceral fat is the kind of fat that if we have a lot of it, it increases our chances of chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, probably dementia, including Alzheimer's, all types of cancers. So I love this preventative game because I don't want to have to go through that in my entire life. And today, 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with a cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 2 men will be diagnosed in their life. All of us know people who have unfortunately gone through that battle and who are currently going through that battle, and it sucks. But there's a lot of hope, and I just don't even want to go there. So this is why I do stuff like this. This is why I eat the way I eat a lot of plants. And by now, that was like 2018. So now it's been, 5 years later? So he had 10,000, at least 10,000 patients. Now there are many, 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 many more. So let's talk about who can fast. People who can fast and do the FMD, he as in Valter Longo, will always say people who are healthy. What does that mean? People who are quite unhealthy will say, she was healthy her whole entire life, and then all of a sudden she got sick. Well, she probably wasn't healthy her entire life, unfortunately. But he says generally people who are healthy. So my definition of healthy is I like to be objective. So I've measured my blood panel and all of my metabolic numbers, like my cholesterol, like my A1C, like my insulin sensitivity. All of that stuff falls in the normal range. In fact, the optimal range. So I'm blown away. I fell in the normal range eating a bunch of plants. I fell in the optimal range after I started doing the FMDs. Yeah, it's insane. So yeah, people who are healthy within normal weight range between the ages of 18 and 70 years old may do the FMD. Okay, those of us who have few genetic mutations, I don't know if I have genetic mutations or not. I imagine I do. I think everybody does. And any side effects that will occur for us, healthy people, will be slight headache, tiredness. If you do get really weak or healthy, just drink a small amount of fruit juice, maybe eat something little, call your doctor, blah, blah, blah. I have always felt hungry. I feel not tired as in sleepy, but I feel weak because I don't have a lot of energy coming in. So that's to be expected. But the more I do this, the faster I get over that hump. And I spend most of my fast over the 5 days with normal energy, and I can totally control my hunger. Never thought I would get there in a million years, but I'm still shocked that I can do that. It's definitely a mindset thing, but also just a practice thing. And I think my body is just used to doing this fast. And so therefore it's become, I never want to say easy, but yeah, kind of easy. Okay, who may not do the FMD? Pregnant women, people who are underweight, people over the age of 70. Somebody recently commented on this channel about that. And they said that, that it's a couple and they fast very often, that they're totally healthy. Longo is just being really, really careful. And his whole point is when you are like Christopher Gardner, who's a scientific researcher from Stanford in the Bay Area, he will say it's not necessarily that they need more protein, it's that they kind of lose their appetite for food. So they don't eat as much. I can't see myself becoming that way when I'm 65 or 70, if I'm lucky enough to get there. But I can understand why he says that, because many elderly do kind of like, they can't eat as much. So his point is you have to make sure that when you do eat, it is sufficient in protein. So you're not going to just eat like croissants all day, right? You're going to want to eat like real food, whole foods, whole plant foods, and get all of your nutrients with the limited amount of food that you're going to eat. Just make it count. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So other people who may not do it, anyone who is fragile, anyone with liver or kidney diseases, anyone affected by pathologies, people who are taking medications. So if you're taking a prescription medication, the fasting state is no joke. So you need to work with your doctor. You might really mess yourself up if you don't. People who have low blood pressure, he really has like a huge section about, especially if you are taking insulin, if you are a type 2 diabetic, like it could be fatal if you do this without working with a professional. So like, don't mess around with this. He also talks about athletes who are training or in competition. Like obviously you're not going to fast during this, but there are some warnings. But in general, I find that unless I am like going for a run in like 80-degree weather, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Okay. So when it comes to cancer, his biggest thing, the whole FMD was designed for cancer patients. So Longo and his team, they knew that when we go into a fasting state, our healthy cells have this magic shield. He literally writes those words, magic shield. And there's a protective barrier that surrounds our healthy cells. He is an advocate of going into a fasting state as a cancer patient who is undergoing modern treatment like a chemotherapy. And when you go into chemotherapy, your cancerous cells are exposed, and therefore the chemo targets the cancer cells and it tends to protect the normal cells. So therefore, chemotherapy is way more effective and you recover much better. So people who are undergoing cancer, many of them lose a lot of weight. Nobody wants them to lose more weight, but if you are not super frail and you can get into a fasting state, working with a doctor, then do the ProLon kit, do the official kit. Don't do a DIY. Do the official ProLon, okay? So I think that is the thing that blew my mind the most when it comes to the benefits of doing an FMD. Anyway, I don't want to go into that. There's so much to unpack. So yeah, basically who can fast? When it comes to a DIY version, I'm going to say who can fast and who cannot. Who cannot do it in a DIY fast, my opinion, is anyone who, exactly what I just said, anyone who's on prescription meds, anyone who has a chronic disease, and let's just stop there, okay? And then if you are elderly and kind of like fragile, then you probably don't want to do that, okay? But for anybody who is like kind of just like me, healthy to super healthy, you move your body, you have love in your life, you're pretty happy, you're pretty fulfilled. Of course, we always want more, but that's also part of being healthy, in my opinion. You eat like a champ on most days, you move your body, you lift weights, you have muscle mass, That's Ruby. She's just saying hello. And if you have kind of like some sort of issues, like a little bit of eczema, a little bit of leaky gut here and there, a little bit of inflammation, or you just want to be in the preventative game, like moi. So he literally says on page 115, I will go into detail in the following chapters on how this program can have profound effects when it comes to preventing, delaying, treating, and even reversing specific diseases. So when it comes to preventing and delaying, I think of it as like the healthy people, right? We can do a DIY. When it comes to treating and even reversing specific diseases, I would recommend don't do the DIY. Just go with the official ProLon kit. I've done the official ProLon kit. I do think it's more effective. There are pros and cons. I loved how easy it was. You just open up a box every day and you open up the packet of food. It may smell like dog food for a second, but once you cook it, it's actually really delicious. I find the flavors amazing and I had no problems with it. I know some people don't like it, but anyway, it's all good. When it comes to that magic shield, if you are interested in that, you need to Google something called differential stress resistance. That is a Longo terminology, and that's that magic shield that protects our healthy cells. How amazing, right? All right, so that is that. How to do a DIY fasting mimicking diet. So let's look at this. The fasting mimicking diet, or the FMD, is going to get you into a true fast. Okay, so normally when we're eating, we are going to be eating typically lots of carbs, obviously natural carbs. That looks like 75%. I meant to do more like 80%. So here, I eat lots of carbs, and I'm learning from like the plant-based doctors, like Dr. McDougall, like Joel Furman, like T. Colin Campbell, like Michael Greger, like all those OG modern plant-based doctors. Lots of them will say like eat mostly carbs, right? So that's all carbs. And then about 10% and 10% are fat and protein. It's a terrible drawing, but all to say that the majority of our calories on a normal basis is that. On the FMD, however, it's very different. So the FMD is a 5-day fast. Okay. And on day 1, we are going to have high. When you're in a fasting state and going into ketosis, we are eating a high fat diet. So fat is going to be really high. And then it's moderate carbs. This supports what Longo says when he does something that is safe. So he has mentioned like the reason why ProLon does have moderate carbs is because he doesn't want you to like faint and pass out. So apparently we need at least 500 calories a day. Every single day of the fasting mimicking diet, you are getting at least 500 calories. On the low end, when we're getting into ketosis, we have very low protein. So every single day, days 1 to 5, high fat, moderate carbs, low protein. That's all really you need to know to start building your own DIY fast, or FMD, I should say. Okay, the exact calculations by day. 56% fat on day 1, 34% carbs, and only 10% protein. Whoops, that's day 1. Days 2 to 5 are the exact same. So 44% fat. I know you're like, how the heck am I going to calculate this? 47% carbs and 9% protein. Okay. In terms of calories on day 1, it's 1,090. Days 2 to 5, it's 725 calories. Can you see that? Yes, you can. Now, this is interesting because if you Google DIY fasting mimicking diets online, you will see lots of different menus. I've taken 2 or 3 of the most popular ones. I've input all the numbers into Chronometer, and the percentages do not work out for me. But these are actually medical clinics, and they help lots of patients, and these patients see a lot of benefits. So I believe, and this is what I've experienced, is that when I've done the FMD, especially in my later rounds, I've been a little bit flexible just to see, am I still in ketosis? Can I mess around with the percentages a little bit? So obviously, I don't think it's going to be as effective as ProLon because I'm not sticking to those specific numbers that have like $30 million of research backed into it. But I'm still in ketosis. I still have a beautiful fast, and I have a wonderful experience. So this is what I love about the DIY. It can be very personalized to you. All right. So there's my messy writing. I will input this Chronometer. Oh boy. Having a tough time today. Meter.com. There's other ones like MyFitnessPal, but Chronometer.com is what I like to use to input all of my food. So how are you going to do this? My high recommendation is you start with fat. This is a totally 100% plant-based fast, like he says in the book. So you're going to go into Chronometer, and you're going to start with day 1, and you're going to start to try to target these percentage numbers. So whole plant foods that are high in fat are things like avocado, nuts and seeds. There's no avocado in the official ProLon as far as I'm concerned, but there are nuts and seeds because they've got their bars. So that is an excellent high fat whole food product that also happens to have a ton of nutrients. So you are getting a lot of nutrients every single day during this fast. So we're going to start off there, high fat. Every day is going to be high fat. And then just put in your favorite high fat items. That could also mean things like peanut butter. It can mean things like almond butter, cashew butter. Some people don't like avocados. Man, I've been asked for so many different variations, and I'm working on them. Okay. So carbs, you're going to move there next. So when I think of carbs, I think of whole carb foods and like starchy foods. So I think of potatoes, sweet potatoes, maybe corn, maybe some beans, very, very minimal. And then, of course, I'm also going to think about some fruit and some regular vegetables. Funny thing, though, is all of those things that I just mentioned, they have fat, carbs, and protein. All of that food has all 3 components. So just start with the high fat components, add more quantity in the fat, higher fat plants, and then you're going to work down. And then it's really just a matter of inputting all types of different plants that you enjoy eating, that you don't have allergic reactions to, that your stomach kind of is pleased with. And then you're just going to fiddle around with those amounts until you land on 56% fat, 4% carbs, 10% protein on day 1 for a total of 1,090 calories. Now, some of the other DIYs will say 1,100 calories, so I will see both. Some people who might weigh more, might be much taller, they might be men. You could probably get away with more calories and still get into a fasting state and reap all the benefits of the FMD. Okay, so then on days 2 to 5, gets a little easier because we're just repeating the exact same menu for all the rest of those 4 days. So again, you're going to start with your fatty items, repeat what you did for day 1, and you're going to try to get to 44%. You're going to do the same process, 44% fat, 47% carbs, 9% protein. This might drive you crazy working in Chronometer. Drove me crazy. It took me forever to get to these numbers. My husband got to these numbers first, and then I checked his work, and his numbers were off. So it took hours and hours and hours. I'm embarrassed to say that it took so long for me to get to those numbers. But it's also kind of fun too. I also looked at the official ProLon kit, and I looked at their ingredients because Longo talks about Nutra technology. He uses nutrients from nature and, builds his technology around that. So I literally copied some of those ingredients. So he's got things like leeks. He's got things like onions and garlic and some beans and some sweet potato. And so lots of different things, butternut squash. So all of those things I try to input into here. And then soon I will be working on a no nuts version, a no avocado version. I have a no mushroom version. There's so many versions. So anybody who purchases our DIY plan, which has, again, nothing to do with ProLon, it's just something that I have built and refined with some of my husband's help. We do 1090 calories, 725. Days 2 to 5, other DIYs, I've seen 800 calories. So again, I think that you will totally get into the fasting state, have an amazing experience using those numbers. This is what I like. I like flexibility. You could do this in an entire Mexican menu. You could do an entire Korean menu. You can do so many different things. Some of the DIY FMDs I see online are totally off. So it looks like so much food because it is so much food. And those calories are way too much. I don't know. Maybe you'll get into the fasting state, but I'm not even going to bother experimenting with those menus because the numbers are way too off. Okay, so DIY versus ProLon. Just to recap, if you're on medications or you have a chronic disease, please, please, please just try the official ProLon and work with your doctor. If your doctor does not know anything about fasting, maybe pick this book up and read about it. My next read is going to be this oldie but goodie, Fasting and Eating for Health by Joel Fuhrman. He is a medical doctor who treats real people and helps them reverse all kinds of sicknesses. And then we're also on our part 3 going to talk about refeeding and how we come out of our fast in the optimal way. I'll give you a hint, it has something to do with eating plants. So the DIY version I love because it has more bulk. You're eating much more food. I love that it's fresh food, but you do have to weigh everything very meticulously. And it's also way cheaper. Yeah. The ProLon, I love that it's so easy. It is effective. They do include supplements. I do not include supplements in my DIY, but if you take supplements on a daily or regular basis, continue doing that during a DIY version. The ProLon kit is pricey. So when I bought it for 250 bones US per kit. So I spent hundreds of dollars. I bought 3 of them. And now I see that it's down to maybe $150. So it's shot right down in price. I think that is very reasonable for people who are sick and who are very serious about refeeding like a champ. So if you're going to abide by Longo's recommendations, which is essentially just eat a bunch of whole plant foods all the time. He's not saying you have to be perfect. Of course, we're going to have junk food and, be normal and live normal lives. But if you can commit to eating a bunch of whole plants and then a little bit of something, then I would highly recommend ProLon. If you have MS, if you have any kind of, obviously cancers or just any kind of chronic disease, you want to tap into the amazing research of all of these guys. And these scientists from all over the world. He works with people all over the place. And this is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. I just kind of love this product. I don't love ProLon, which is why I don't buy the kit all the time, because at the end of my ProLon fast, I got really angry at it. I wanted nothing to do with it. It comes with this huge water bottle, and I chucked it in the trash because that's just how I felt about ProLon. The end of my kit. I'm not sure what the heck was going on there, but what I've realized is that ProLon is just not for me. But again, if I had a chronic disease, I would absolutely do it. If you are diabetic, if you are obese, Longo recommends that you can do it every single month for up to 6 months or maybe even longer. Again, he's work with a doctor. And then on year 2, you can scale down and just do it maybe 3, 4, 5 times. And then year 3 on, you can do it 3 times a year until you're 65 or 70 years old. Yeah, but otherwise, DIY version is where it's at for me. So Next week, I'm going to review my notes. I took copious amounts of notes and learned so much more about fasting, including when women should fast according to our cycles. Is it a crock of, is it BS or not? I don't know. I'm not sure. The jury's out on that one. But there is something called the Fasting Longevity Summit. Yes, it was hosted and sponsored by El Nutra or like ProLon, but it doesn't matter. There were all these fasting experts, and it was pretty interesting. And of course, Valter Longo was on it. And I took copious amounts of notes, and I want to share them with you, but just not today because this is already going on far too long. But next Sunday, same time, same place, I'm going to share his feedback, his notes. I'm going to share my insights based on my experience, based on all the videos that I've watched from him, based on the research studies that I've read, based on this book. So just looking at all that information and looking at hearing his presentation during the summit just kind of, sparks new ideas and kind of makes me understand fasting and the FMD on a deeper level. So I'm going to share that with you next week. The part 3 is going to be all about refeeding because that is the most important part about fasting. So all to say, whether you're going to do a DIY or a ProLon, it's only worth it if you can commit to refeeding like a champ. Then it is totally worth it. But if you think I'm just going to go on my fast food diet and I'm just going to do this fast every once in a while, personally, I just don't think that's going to help. Okay. I don't think that's going to help. For me, it has helped me really understand when I should stop eating. So it has totally changed my relationship with food. I used to just gorge and eat until I was very uncomfortably full. And, you do that every single year for a number of years and you start adding unwanted weight that could affect your metabolic health and so on and so on. So now I can just say no. And it's all about not consuming too many calories. So the fact that I've learned how to do that is like huge for me. I've also had these extraordinary mental, emotional, psychological awakenings. I used to call them exorcisms. And I really just think it's deep-seated things that were just not, I wasn't really paying attention to them. So they could, be deep-seated, they could fester and grow, and it could just also lead to sickness. Who knows? But I feel free. I feel healed. And that's probably the biggest benefit for me. I also am totally in the preventative game. I'm not one to think that I'm not going to be that person diagnosed with some kind of a cancer. I've had terrible lifestyle habits for many years of my life. So I guess I'm just kind of playing catch up and cleaning my act up. And I intend to do this until the end. All right. So with that, that happy note, happy Lunar New Year. And I will see you next time for more fasting info. All right. Have a good one. Bye.